All right, we want to welcome you out to our webinar today. If everyone can hear me, all the attendees can hear me, if you could just go ahead and type yes, we can hear you in the chat, or a couple people can, that just let us know that we're all good and everyone can hear us. By way of introduction, I'm Cameron Christensen, LabSim Product Manager, and we're excited to hold this webinar today to discuss a LabSim update that will enhance you and your students' experiences in the classroom. We've got some exciting features to show you, and it's something that we're very excited about. One clarification, just before we get started, this is a LabSim update. LabSim's the platform that runs our courseware. So while your students are using PC Pro, Network Pro, Office Pro, any of our products, LabSim's the platform that enables the courseware and helps you create classes, custom exams, things like that. So that is what this update is about. Just to clarify there, the courses are updated periodically and you receive separate communication on those updates throughout the year as well. I want to introduce those on the TestOut side that will be on the call today that you'll be hearing for shortly. Again, I'm Cameron Christensen, LabSim Product Manager. We also have Nate Garner, TestOut CTO. You just got a promotion there on accident, don't tell. Nate Garner, TestOut CTO. And then we also have Stevie George. Many of you know her. She's our LabSim Implementation Manager. Our agenda today will kind of go as followed. First, we're going to hear from Nate on why we're upgrading LabSim now, some of the technology behind that. Next, Stevie and myself will kind of walk you through some of the exciting features and functionality of this update, the stuff that will get you excited. And then Nate's going to kind of walk us through a basic timeline of when you can expect to kind of see this update appear at your campuses. And to finish things off, we're going to have a Q&A portion. If you have any questions during the webinar, go ahead and type them into the box. I believe it should be on the right-hand side there. We do have people behind the scenes that are kind of answering some of those questions directly if it's something that they want to respond to directly, and they'll take some of the important ones and kind of save them for our Q&A period at the end. If we don't get to your questions, we will reach out to you after the webinar. So that's kind of all the housekeeping up front stuff. Let's go ahead and get going. We're going to turn the time over to Nate to kind of discuss why we're updating LabSim now.
If you want to consider LabSim as if it was this stack of blocks here, each one of these blocks represents one technology or piece of technology, and all of that together adds up to be LabSim. Over the years, we've done a lot of work in giving you new features. But if you can picture what would happen in this stack of blocks if you were to take one block out and replace it with another, that you can see that at the top of this pyramid, it would be no big deal to take out one green block and add another green block in its place. That's the kind of feature changes that we've been doing over the years. But to take one of those red blocks down at the bottom and pull that out, you risk having the whole tower tumble down. It's hard to make changes to the foundation of the product. And we've recognized the need for some of that foundational change. And so we're really excited with LabSim version 6, because instead of just replacing a few green blocks at the top, we've decided to build a whole new tower so that we can have modern technology throughout the whole system and not just at the top, the pieces that are most visible to you. So let me just give you an example of one of the kinds of things that maybe you've been frustrated with in LabSim that we've just been kind of stuck with because it's at one of those lower foundational levels we've had a hard time changing. So that example I'll give you is Popup Blockers. As you go into a course and you start running through our simulations, you'll find that when you launch a simulation, it opens in a new browser tab or new browser window. And for the most part, most browsers are going to stop you and say, oh, this is a pop-up, so we're not going to display it until you give permissions. And so you have to go give instructions to your students about here's how you disable a pop-up blocker. Well, the whole reason that pop-up blockers are a problem for us is because of a foundational technology that's more in the yellow or red areas of our building block set here. And so we've just kind of been stuck with it. with building a whole new set of technologies and starting a whole new tower, if you will, then we get to throw away some of those old problems and just start clean and say, you know what, pop-up blockers, not a problem ever anymore in this new version, LabSim 6. So that's why, and you'll get to see a lot of the new features that are changing in the top levels, but you'll also get lots of things that you'd never get if we hadn't started over with a new technology set.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. So Nate gave us a good introduction on one of the things that you're going to see, pop-up blockers. Stevie's going to dive in and kind of get into the updated version of LabSim and start showing us. And we're going to see a lot of familiar, but we wanted to highlight some of those differences. So Stevie, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cameron. And one of the things I wanted to start out with, we always enjoy, of course, personally helping our customers out. But we know that there are times where maybe we're not in the office when you need assistance. So we've designed a whole new help system within LabSim. I can go to, let's say, for instance, I'm going to go to my custom exams, and let's just say I haven't created a custom exam for a while. I can go up to the help, which is the question mark. And here I automatically have some top suggestions of things that I might need to look at. And of course, the first suggestion, as you can see, is to create a custom exam. When I click on that suggestion, it provides some more detail for me. There is a short video that you can watch to learn how to create a custom exam, as well as written steps that can be followed. If you want something like simply written instead of watching the video, as well as we have a pop-out that you can go to, which will then provide some more detail for you. We have articles that may also have other things you might be interested in looking at here. Besides, of course, the video, the written steps are on this page, and then you can look up other information using the search bar at the top for any other help you may be interested in looking up, as well as, of course, you can chat with us. Obviously, that would be during our regular support hours that the chat would work.
And this, like Stevie mentioned, we always like hearing from you. This is designed for two real big reasons. The first one is to kind of help through this update. As you've kind of seen in LabSim, it looks generally the same. Everything has stayed mostly in the same spot. There are a few differences, and so that help feature is designed to kind of help navigate those. So that's one of the big reasons and things that we're excited about. The second thing is we know that at your campuses you have new instructors adding all the time that are using TestOut as a resource in their classroom. Stevie's great at getting to training, but sometimes schedules don't match up and stuff like that. And so that help is designed to help onboard instructors as well, help them, give them a good foundational knowledge to keep them active in LabSim and be able to use it in their classroom. So it's something that should be a great help to your instructors as well. So, Stevie, let's dive into a few of the other things.
Absolutely. So one other thing, I'm going to go ahead and click the browser back arrow to go back to my main page. And I think there's probably already people out there cheering for this feature here. You can now use the back arrow, the forward arrow, and the refresh on your browser. So we have a browser-friendly interface in LabSim 6. The other thing that's really great for instructors is that we know that many of you may teach at different campuses or even within different academic organizations. So before, you had to have, of course, separate accounts in order to have an account at one facility and, of course, an account at another facility. Now you can have one account. You can see on this instructor, Sunny here, she has an account set up with 1234 College, and she also teaches at another facility. So instead of having to have two accounts for each of these organizations, she has one account that she can actually toggle back and forth between.
And this, like Stevie mentioned, this eliminates the need to have separate accounts for separate, organizations. We realize that's a hassle. One of the foundational building blocks is allowing us to give that feature to you there. And along with that, many of you are probably going to be asking, well, I already have 2 accounts. Will those be brought over? Yeah, they'll be brought over. We also have instructions on how to merge those accounts so that you only need the one login and password to do administrative things for both campuses. So that will be included in instructions there as well.
All right, now I want to go in and talk about a few changes that you're going to see in the classes. So to do so, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm in the Classes tab. I'm going to simply add a new class. And one of the first things you're going to notice is that we have a start and end date. You can, of course, pick the date that your class is going to begin, and then you can also pick a date that your class will be ending. 2 weeks after this end date, your class will automatically archive for you. Another great feature in creating a class, this one has been asked multiple times. We know that sometimes you may have another instructor that teaches with you or needs to have access to the report data. So now you can add an additional instructor to your class. So you can have more than one instructor associated with your class. And of course, we still need to have the product associated with the class. So basically, the 2 features here that you're going to see new are the start date, an end date, and you can have multiple instructors with this class.
And so obviously the team teacher, that's fairly self-explanatory. We've heard that a lot from you guys that are at the schools, is that we need the ability to add at least 2 instructors, and so that one's fairly self-explanatory. The start and end date, that's going to help instructors keep their class list clean. This class list that Stevie's showing, it doesn't need to show classes that are ended 2 years ago and haven't been able to go in and archive them. It'll help kind of keep that clean because we will auto archive it. Just putting it on a separate list there, you can still see the archived classes, you can still go look at the reports and everything. It's just helping keep everything current. And so those are a couple of the reasons that we implemented some of those features.
One other thing that I know instructors sometimes struggle with is that students don't do the enrollment step. So once your class, of course, is created, then it becomes the student's responsibility to enroll in the class, and sometimes they simply forget that step. Well, one new feature that we've added is that you can go to your class, click the More button, and you can invite users to the class. This gives you the ability to be able to enter the student's email address, and you can enter multiple students here, of course, just 1 per line as it notes. Once you've entered the student's information, you click Next, and then it asks me simply to confirm that this is what I'd like to do. An email will be sent to this particular student, and I can click Invite, and an invitation has now been sent specifically to that student. And I'm going to show a little bit later when we get to some of the changes for the students what that information will look like. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that we know also as instructors, you like to be able to see what the students are going to see directly. In the past, you've had to have a separate account that's had to be created. Well, we've simplified that whole process. So now if I simply want to look at a student view across from my class, again, I can click the More button and select Student View, and immediately it will log me into what the student would see. The only exception on this is, of course, you have a blue header that simply says Student View that the students wouldn't directly see themselves. But other than that, everything is going to look the same. And of course, once you want to exit out after you've viewed anything here, you can click the X in the upper right to, of course, return back to your instructor account.
Yeah, so as we've spoken with you all about this specific feature, we found that it's being used in a couple different ways, common ways. Number one, you guys are making documentation to kind of show and walk your students step by step through. And so this will give a specific student at a specific class that correct documentation that you guys can get without having to create a second account. The other thing that is common is that You all want to be able to see and make sure that you've scheduled your custom exam, that it really is available for your students in that class. And so we have been able to provide that with this student view. And so hopefully it eliminates, again, the need to have another account that you need to log into. So Stevie, let's jump into some of the changes that students are going to see.
Absolutely, and I just logged in as a student here, and I want to start out by going to the invitation that the instructor sent to the student. I have up a Gmail here. Here's the invitation that the student received, and you can see that they now have an invitation from LabSim that here is the campus, the class, the instructor, and of course they would click Join Now. As soon as they click the Join Now, the instructor would then see them, of course, in the enrollment roster within their class specifically.
Yeah, so that is really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the students where they need to be. Oftentimes, I know that you guys at the school level, also us here in support, we're hearing calls from students saying, my teacher's not seeing me in my class. Or calls from teachers saying, I'm not seeing my student in my class. And so this is one of the ways, and we're going to cover a couple more here in a couple minutes, but this is one of the ways that we're trying to get the student in the right place so that everyone's seeing the right information. All they need to do is hit that Join Now. They either need to log into an existing account or create their account, and like Stevie mentioned, they'll be added right into that organization and class so that we can see the information that we need to see where we need to see it.
Another thing, as Cameron was just mentioning, there's another way that students can do that. So, for instance, on this particular student account, you can see that this student for the PC Pro is associated with a specific class, but you can also see with Network Pro, there's no class association. So one of the new features that we've added in is as soon as a student clicks on a product where there's not a class associated, they immediately receive a warning message telling them, of course, that they're not associated with a class and that in order for their instructor to see information, they have to be enrolled. So they can do that step directly from here. So again, just another option that is already in, of course, LabSim 6 that will help the students make sure they get to the right place specifically.
Yeah, again, we know that following instructions, sometimes it happens and it doesn't happen. We know that that's a spotty thing, and so it's just another thing we've added in to try and get them to the right place, get them in your class that you've set up.
And one of the other features that I want to point out, this is going to be, I think, really exciting, particularly for students, is that they can save progress now on both section and domain exams. So I'm going to go down to, let's say, CompTIA Core 1, and let's say the student would like to study all the questions in the hardware section, but as you can see, there's 154 questions, and students typically aren't going to have time to sit and do all of those questions at one time. So now I can start the exam. And for purposes here today, I'm simply just going to pick the first answer for each question, simply to show you here. I'm going to go through a few questions, and then I'm going to say that I've run out of time and I need to exit the exam. So I've done 7 questions. I'm going to go ahead and exit my exam, and notice that the students get a message now asking them if they would simply like to score the exam. Of course, it would only score the 7 that I've done so far, or I can save the exam. I'm going to save. And now when the student comes back, it doesn't matter whether it's 5 minutes later, that same day, or later in the week, you can see that underneath the start exam, there's a blue message that says that they have an incomplete exam session. So then when they go ahead and click start exam, it now gives them the ability to resume the test, and it will go back to, of course, where I left off. Here's number 7. Now I can continue with number 8. And of course, the students can do this multiple times.
Yeah, Stevie, I think I can hear the cheers happening.
I agree.
This is something that we have heard about a lot, whether it's trying to do these in class where there's a limited amount of time, or these large sections that we have that are really for practice, kind of for the drilling of and preparing for those certifications. They're large, and we know that we cannot do them in one sitting. In some of the newer courses, we have been able to kind of make 2 sections out of it, where we have 20 random questions. Those are a lot more manageable. But in the updated version of LabSim, we are giving that ability to save so that they can continue on from where they are. And we think that this is something that's really going to help in your students' preparation for their exams. So.
All right, now I'm going to go ahead and log out of this particular account, and I want to go and talk about the student who's setting up account initially. And of course, if we know what campus that student is potentially supposed to be associated with, the code will automatically default to that. Otherwise, the student's going to be prompted for that detail during the setup process. So Cameron is going to discuss this in more detail while I demo a student creating a LabSim account with an activation code that isn't attached to obviously a school or the instructor.
Perfect, yes. So this goes back to getting students again in the right spot. So as Stevie's creating this here, we obviously cater to a lot of different buying scenarios here at TestOut. One of them is we give them activation codes, and sometimes we know where those activation codes exactly where they're going. So we can say, oh, this activation code, belongs to TestOut University. Sometimes we don't know because we're selling a group of them to a bookstore or whatever. And so if we do not know, we are going to ask the student. The first page they're going to see is the educational account setup. And Stevie actually is showing another thing right here that is kind of new. We're asking for a mobile number. They can provide it or not, but that will help with password recovery if the student ever needs it. But back to the educational account setup page. The first thing we're saying is, hey, we don't know where you belong. We know you're an active academic student. Where are you supposed to be? And so it says find my campus. The student can search for their campus and add themselves to the campus. Step 2 is an optional one where we're saying, hey, you're probably supposed to be in a class, maybe not, but find my class. All they need to do is search for their teacher and select the specific class that they're supposed to be enrolled in. If the students do skip this enrollment, because we do understand that not every school uses classes, we do have those the other features later on that we showed you, I guess, a few minutes ago that will help catch those that aren't in classes, that are supposed to be in a class but are not. And so go ahead and hit finish, and we'll see that the student is now enrolled in the correct class and university. So that is just something that we've added, again, to get students in the right place, because we know that is a pain point.
All right, one other thing that I'm going to log back into my instructor account here to show is scheduling for custom and pro certification exams. So to review the changes, I'm going to simply go through the scheduling process. I'm going to go to the custom exams tab, and I've created a test here that I want to schedule. So I go to the more button and of course select schedule exam. I can select my class. Obviously, if I had other classes that would be able to take this test, they would be appearing as well. So the nice thing now versus what we were doing in LabSim 5 is that I am now picking dates for the entire class, not just for individual students. The other thing that I know is going to be exciting to everybody out there is this feature right here. You can now set the amount of attempts that you would like the students to take, or if you uncheck the box, you know it has unlimited attempts. So you can set how many attempts you would like. This is another request feature that we've obviously seen quite or had quite often.
So yeah, that's something that I was most excited about when we started working on this. Was I know that it was either unlimited or one attempt, and also if you wanted a second attempt, you had to go schedule the student. As Stevie hits next here, one of the other important things to distinguish on exam scheduling is that we are now scheduling the class. If you remember, in the current version of LabSim, you're setting you're selecting a class to schedule, but then you're selecting every single student and making sure that they have a specific schedule. That's not the case in the updated LabSim. We set the default schedule for the class. So if a student adds late by chance, which is something that happens often, they're going to inherit the default schedule for that class. But also we have the flexibility. Let's see that Autumn Frost here needs to have a specific schedule for her. Check her name, hit the actions, say set custom schedule. You can set a custom schedule just for one student. So that is really where the improvement on exam scheduling, whether it's custom or certification, is going to help your instructors and your campus administrators, is that the default schedule for a class is this. Now we can go and make the exceptions for individual students. And so hopefully that kind of streamlines your time and helps so that you don't have to keep track of every single student that adds late or removes late or anything like that. And so that's kind of where we're going there. So I think we've kind of covered some of the major features. Obviously, there's other little things we'll continue to communicate. We have that help there. But a lot of it is fairly similar from the LabSim that you know and you're used to. And so we have a few of those exciting things that we are happy to show you. But we're going to transition now and kind of talk about when. I'm sure that's the question that we're getting a lot is, well, when are we going to see this? And so I'm going to kind of turn the time over to Nate. He's going to kind of go over some of our basic timeline of what we're looking at, and we'll go from there. Nate?
As you can see from the slide, we're attempting to do this in 3 buckets, if you will. The good news for all of you is that for you receiving the update, this is a painless process. We'll flip a switch on our side of things and you'll see the new system. It's as simple as that. There's nothing for you to do on your side. You'll, of course, want to get familiar with the new interface and the new features, maybe do some training, but there's nothing for you to do to get this update other than to help us to identify which of these buckets you'll belong in. That being said, with these rollouts, we want to make sure that we give the best experience possible to everyone. And so we're attempting to have the bulk of the schools go through in July, and we're having an early group here in April that are going to be a little bit of a test group for us that allow us to gain confidence that the whole process that we've got functions really well. And so for April, we'll be talking about probably mid-April, not the beginning of April, but we'll be looking for people who are choosing to be early adopters. And as we gain feedback from that experience, then we'll be moving into those next 2 buckets where we'll be doing more mass rollouts. But still in May-June timeframe, it'll be a smaller set still. And then in July, we hope to move pretty much all the schools over to the new system. So at the end of our webinar here, we'll be going into Q&A soon here, but we have a poll that we'll want you to answer that helps us to identify your interest level in being one of these early adopters. And we may not be able to accommodate everyone that's excited to be an early adopter. Some of you may end up in that second bucket, even if you want to be in the first. But we want to move forward responsibly to make sure that everybody gets a great experience. So if you'll help us by answering that poll, we'll get a feel for whether or not we want to reach out to you and say, hey, let's put you in that first group.
Awesome. Yeah, and as Nate mentioned, this is just for us to kind of gauge interest. We'll be reaching out if we want to work together to kind of have your school be involved in an early adopter. It is important to realize that this is not something that just one teacher at one class can update. We'll be doing this on a school basis, and so we'll have to work with whatever campus administrators you have to coordinate that there as well. So I think that is kind of covers it for the timeline. I think we can kind of close the poll there. Awesome. We're going to move into Q&A. We have a few questions that have come in. I'll kind of read them, go through them, and we will get answers from those of us that can provide them. So the first question that I have here is, are the actual courses different? Different lessons, labs, videos, or just the interface? Good question. It's just the interface. As you kind of saw up there, it looks very similar to the old one, but no, this is the interface. PC Pro, Network Pro, any of those courses are unaffected. Let's go to kind of some class management questions. Will students continue to have access to their product after the class end date or the archive date? Yes, they will. Absolutely. We sell licenses for a period of time, and that period of time is not tied to the class starter end date. All right. Let's see. Will this have any effect on archived course sections? Will we still have access? Is it backed up? Yeah, so that's a great question. We are working through, so yes, you will still have access to your archived classes, at least some of them. We have a data retention plan that is currently or will be going in place. So some of the old stuff will not be available, but if you see something that's not there when you do upgrade, reach out to us. We should have everything there. So, okay, next one is start and end date required, because school has, our school has an open entry, open exit. That's a great question. Start and end date is required. We do give a lot of leniency on start and end dates, though. I believe we let classes be open for 18 months or so, 18 months from the day the class is created. And so we do realize that we have some that are open entry and open exit. We will just have to create new classes on a yearly basis or 18-month basis for those. But yes, start and end date is required. Okay, next question. If the class is auto-archived, will the student be able to be scheduled for the certification exam? I believe so. That's a good question for me to follow up. I believe so. I believe it still follows the same process of the current LabSim, where this teacher could schedule them, or if not, they can reach out to support and be scheduled. But that's a good follow-up question for in the future. All right, next question. What will happen to the students in that class when the class ends? Essentially nothing. They will get a warning that says, hey, your class is ending in 5 days. That's just a reminder for them to finish up any work that they need to, but they will still have access to that product, as I mentioned. Okay, we have a few questions on invitations to students. Let's cover those. With the invitations, can you import a list of emails to invite all students? In other words, is there a way to invite multiple emails in one step, maybe a CSV update? Yes, so we have a couple different things. So you can just paste essentially a list of emails to send to a group of students at the same time. The feature is capable to do that. We also have a CSV update that we can add student accounts that way. And so I think the answer to that question is kind of covers two features, but yes, you can just take your column of email addresses from your CSV file and just paste them in there. As long as they're separated by a hard return, you'll invite as many students as we're putting in there. Can I only invite students who have purchased TestOut materials? You can invite any student. They will have to have an activation code to be able to create a new account, or an existing account to be able to add it to. They'll have to have an existing account to log in to be joined to your cloud accounts. So students could have a TestOut account set up before, or they don't need to.
Let me just add a little clarification there. Let's say that you do send an invitation to a student that has not yet created an account. They can click a link in there. It will take them to the account creation page. They'll see that they need the activation code, so they won't be able to go much further until they purchase. But as soon as they purchase, that invitation will help them to go through the account creation process. And so you can use that invitation as a way to walk your students through the process of creating an account, rather than having to tell them, okay, wait till the first day of class because I'll need to explain this to you. The invitation helps that.
Perfect. Thank you, Nate. All right. We have a question on roles. Will roles transfer over to LabSim 6? For example, I'm a campus admin. Will it transfer over? Yes, it will. Yep, everyone's role will be the same in this update. Can I still have separate accounts? Because sometimes it's helpful to have the separate account because some organizations require you to keep your work separate. Yes, absolutely. That is just fine. All right, we have some question on LMS. Does the invitation process work with Canvas's enrollment process? No, it does not. Canvas, the invitation process, Canvas should be creating those accounts automatically. And so if your school is integrated with Canvas EduApp, when they click a link, their account should be created. And so there would be no need to invite them that way. And so if you have any questions on that, please reach out to our implementation team there. Another LMS question, will you cover whether old LMS integrations still work? They do. They will, yes. There will be no changes to the links that you have created for your current LMS integration. They'll hit the link and we will be able to figure out whether you during this transition period, whether you are an early adopter and you need to go to the updated version, or if you're haven't yet been moved. We know that. So yep, you'll be just fine there. Let's see. I think most of our test out products are deep linked into Brightspace. Will affect the deep links. Yep, I think we covered that. Okay, yep, we're good there. Okay, so I think that is good for the LMS questions. Let's go ahead and move on to custom exams. Is the save option for an exam disabled once that exam's end date and time has passed? I don't quite understand the question there.
I think I do.
Okay, go ahead, Nate.
That the save button might still appear if someone was in the exam at the time that the end date stops. But the point is that as soon as they save that exam, they would no longer be able to resume. But I should clarify that saving exams is something that we're doing for in-course exams. It's the exams that they get to do over and over and over again because they're part of that formative assessment. But for custom exams and certification exams, they're designed to be those summative assessments where you're not really expecting them to go and repeat that process over and over and over again. And so certainly for a certification exam, you can't save in the middle and come back to it later. You take it in one shot. So it's not all exams that are allowed to save.
Perfect. Yeah, it's just those ones inside the course, the practice questions, so to say. Excellent. Can I use my old custom exam and just adjust the new settings as needed? Yes, your custom exams will be part of the upgrade. They should all be there. That'll be great. Don't need to create new ones. Okay, we have a question about mobile. We have not done anything. The update doesn't cover anything on the mobile. There won't be any apps for smartphones. A main part of LabSim is those labs, and we cannot get those in a mobile format that's really, really good. And so we have held off on that. We do know that there are a lot of people that would love to watch videos and texts and stuff like that. That's something that is kind of on the back of our minds and looking at that, but our labs are really holding us back there. And so at this point, the answer is no on that. Okay. Next question that we had come in is, will you contact schools about when they'll be switched over? Yes, we will have a communication and plan. You'll be aware. Also, as the update time occurs, your students will be updated from within the platform as well. They'll be told, hey, you're going to have some downtime at this date and time. Make sure that you're done and everything's been saved. Leading up to the time that migration that update is happening, the students will also get another warning saying, hey, your account's going to be locked here in a few minutes. Finish up what you're doing. If they try to log in during the time where the update is happening, then they'll get a warning saying, you're being updated. You're going to have to come back in a little bit. So, so that is kind of how the communication with the students will go, the users as they're using the system. But yes, as far as communication, you will know when you're ready to be updated.
It's worth mentioning again, it's already been said, but just to reiterate, we will be moving whole schools at a time. So you won't have one teacher, one instructor on the new platform, one instructor on the old platform, this class on the new platform, this on the old platform. When your institution moves, it will be the whole entire set of students, teachers, classes, all of that going at one time. But with that, again, the integrations are the same. The login page is the same. So you don't need to go to everyone and say, oh, here's what you need to do. You need to go to this new login page instead. You'll go to the same places you have, and you'll just see the new interface because we've switched you over in the middle of the night. And it will be a middle of the night kind of thing where we're only down for a few hours while we're updating schools to the new interface.
Absolutely. Related to that kind of switch, how would this update affect students that are currently in a class? So classes that don't currently have a start date and don't currently have an end date. That is a great question. Classes, as we do this update, they will essentially inherit a start date and an end date, and then you can go and really put those in what they really are after that update. And so I believe that they'll be created. The creation date or the start date will be the day that you upgrade, and the end date will be just, I believe it'll be 18 months in the future there, and you can go in and set that after the fact for those classes that are currently already created. The next question we have on here is, if I sign up for early access, will I have the option to control it with older LabSim if I have problems? So once we upgrade, the upgrade is it. So that's why kind of we have our early adopters. That's why we're working through this very, very closely. We're just not switching it on for a lot of people. So once we update, the update's there. How long does the update take? That's the next question we have in the queue. I think Nate kind of mentioned it. It's kind of an over the night sort of thing where we'll have some system maintenance for a few hours and schools are moved. Okay, I'm scrolling through here to find some other questions related to the update. If a student has to take a class twice, can the instructor delete the previous scores? That's a great question. One thing that will be helpful, and this is a result of having that class start and end date, is that your class gradebook will automatically have the date range of that class. And so you should be able to see what the student has done within the time period of your class start and your end date. And so that's one of the benefits that I don't know if I mentioned before, but it should be fairly simple to see what they've done during your class if a student has had to take a specific class twice. Will there be the ability to lock practice questions so that students can only take them once? No, there will not. That is part of the formative assessment and the practice that we're giving students, and so those are not locked. Let's see. This is not necessarily related to the update, but any integration with Google Classroom. We're LTI 1.1 compliant, so if Google Classroom is, I believe last I heard they had just barely gotten that LTI 1.1 compatibility, so we should be. Okay, that is, oh, here's another question coming through. Oh, that's not related. Okay. I think we're starting to slow down on some of the questions regarding the update. I'm going to look over my shoulder here and get a nod. Yes, no. Okay. All right. I think that's a lot of the questions. You can feel free. We'll reach out, and if we didn't answer your question, we will kind of get back to you on those. You can always reach out via the email that we sent out and ask us any other questions. But for now, thank you very much for joining, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.